The Octobrush is a weapon that has a pretty uneventful history across both games, flying pretty much under the radar the whole time in favor of other similar weapons like rollers. During Splatoon 1, the Octobrush was constantly compared to the Krak-On due to them sharing the same kit, and in Splatoon 2 it was generally seen as something that just didn't perform as well as something else. I, however, have been a big fan of the weapon from the very beginning, and I was actually one of the earliest examples of a competitive Octobrush player, back when using it was seen as throwing or memeing around. No, I was dead serious at the time. I used to play it for a top team and hoped that I'd change some people's minds on it. Now that it's been years later and now the weapon has gotten a lot more people using it than ever before, it makes me happy to see. But as we go into Splatoon 3, I've been wondering how it will compare in the next game. Will the Octobrush keep its position of just sort of being middle tier, or could it even go higher, or maybe even lower? Today I want to talk about the Octobrush and how I might think it actually might be placed in a bit of a higher tier in Splatoon 3 and why. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. First, maybe I should give a bit of a background on the Octobrush's history in regards to where it was placed in tiers. During Splatoon 1, it was pretty much universally seen as not great, and anytime it was brought up, people would respond with, just use the Krak-On, it's better. However, what people didn't know, and something I tried to illustrate early on, is the Octobrush actually did have advantages over the Krak-On, and even having a bit of an exploit to it in the first game, something that was known as damage overlapping. In case you're curious about that, I did make a video way back in Splatoon 1 about it. I'll leave a link to that in the description. In Splatoon 1, I would have considered the Octobrush to be sleeper OP, and that it actually outperformed a lot of things that nobody ever gave a chance to, and a small number of people were willing to give it a chance and push for it to be competitive. Going into Splatoon 2, it was toned back a bit while still giving it some changes. Again, made a video on that too if you want to check that out. They removed its ability to do the damage overlapping in favor of giving it more outright damage, which was a welcome change regardless. By this point, it was a bit more well known the Octobrush actually did excel at more than previously thought, but what held it back were the changes made to the other weapons, along with the new weapons that came into the fold. They didn't make Octobrush bad by any means, it was actually one of the better weapons for dealing with early ink armor, but it still sat at middle tier due to its kits not doing a whole lot for it. So it had a bit of a step down and step up in terms of community view and actual use. With Splatoon 3 on the horizon, there's another chance for this weapon to shine. Over the years, I've seen a lot of opinions from fellow Brush users on how best to fix the Octobrush and make it more viable. A good chunk of them boil down to either giving it damage overlapping back, or just giving it something like burst bombs. While both of these would be really cool things for them to do, I honestly don't think they'll ever revert damage overlapping. That's probably gone for good. However, one thing Nintendo could do to help us Brush players out would be give us actually good kits. An overall problem that exists with a lot of weapons in Splatoon is that there's some really good weapons out there that are held back by their kits. Weapons that really need help in some areas but aren't given them. Like really, what does a 10 umbrella need Splash Wall for? Come on, Nintendo. There's been a constant issue of weapons having kits that basically do nothing for them, and instead of just existing to aid the weapon or be an extension of it, they just do nothing. The reason why people like Burst Bomb so much is because of its versatility. It can be used in so many ways that there's barely any weapon that wouldn't benefit from it. You could use it for mobility, spacing, finishing, starting damage. It's got so many uses. I don't think Nintendo realizes how much they screw over weapons with their kits, and the Brushes have had it really bad with them. Kits that either don't do anything to offset the shortcomings of the main, or kits that just kinda do one and kinda don't. Like when they give us a bomb but then give us a mess special, or give us a good special and a mess sub. Octobrush Nouveau in Splatoon 1 was a good example of a kit that did well to fix the weapon's shortcoming. The Splat Bomb for utility, and Inkzuka for dealing with range. Splatoon 2's Octobrush kits don't really offer the same thing. You kinda get the Inkjet, missiles, or a stamp. Only really one of these is effective at handling ranged enemies, and when used incorrectly it just makes you bait for ranged enemies, so it kinda sucks. So one of the first things Nintendo could do to remedy the position the Octobrush stands in, or any brush for that matter, is actually give us good kits. The brushes lacked good range offense, which is reasonable offset by lethal bombs. Mobility is also a bit of a problem. Despite the great roll speed of the brushes, it's often a death sentence to try and roll everywhere, so something to aid mobility would be great too, like Burst Bomb, or maybe something like Curling Bomb would have been great too. Another thing brushes struggle with is dealing with being locked out. If a brush has no map control, then it really hurts. This could be aided by providing bombs or a special that allows for burst damage. Something to help push enemies away from it, thus allowing it the space to move again. With the addition of the new movement abilities in Splatoon 3, Squid Roll and Squid Surge, Octobrushes will actually have more options when it comes to engaging. Even if Nintendo decides not to give the Octobrush or Inkbrush better kits, there's a chance that these new movement options will allow for us to do some of the fixing of the shortcomings ourselves. Though I'd still like for them to fix the kits, obviously. We still don't know a whole lot about either ability, but we do know that they're geared towards mobility, something that Splatoon 2 started to become a bigger factor with when it came to the dualies, something that ended up hurting some weapons due to their lack of mobility. Now, this will give a mobility option to everyone, thankfully. These are very important in playing a role if the brushes in general are able to adapt to this new game. New kits, new options will really open the door for that. Another reason why Octobrush might be good is simply because of the specials. While the Octobrush never really struggled against the Ink Armor, like I mentioned earlier, it was actually one of the better weapons for dealing with armor in the early days due to its damage output, but the specials in general did hurt the brushes, as a fight with armor almost always meant you were going to end in a trade or a loss. You'd have to really catch someone off guard for the brushes to outright win those fights all the time. With Ink Armor gone, the Octobrush will be able to show everyone just how much damage it can really do when said damage isn't blocked. Other specials that can be a thorn in the brush side are things like Baller and Booyah Bomb, which also provide shields against damage. Granted, this should all be taken with a grain of salt, as there's still a chance that Nintendo introduces more things that may make short-range weapons fear for their lives. The Octobrush is simply a weapon that has had its place in the background, just waiting for its moment to shine, a moment that it should have gotten in the first game, but got overshadowed, and then in the second game, it just didn't get its chance. Unlike a lot of weapons in the game, the Octobrush actually excels in a lot of places, with its biggest being that it's not reliant on gear. Some weapons require certain abilities. The Octobrush has always been able to run just about anything. It's a good way for a brush player to really showcase their play style. This has resulted in not needing a lot done to the weapon to make it better. Compared to weapons where the people may feel like things like main power up or damage up were required, those people may feel like the damage up in their weapon is needed to be adjusted for those to actually exist. The Octobrush has never been in such a situation. The Octobrush is actually in a really good state and always has been. There's just a small list of things that have kept it out of the spotlight all these years. Things that can easily be fixed. Now they feel like it's going to take a lot more time for Nintendo to actually make it bad. Just based solely on what we know now of Splatoon 3 with the specials, the kits, the abilities, I think Octobrush may genuinely be good, if not a higher tier weapon in Splatoon 3 than it ever has been. Now, unless Nintendo's watching me and just getting ready to nerf it just to prove me wrong, or introduce something that might make the brush class non-existent completely. I mean, who knows, maybe the bow will be the ultimate brush counter. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. What do you guys think? Do you think other weapons will finally get their chance to shine in Splatoon 3? And if so, which ones? I'd like to hear what you guys think would do better in the next game. And so with that, that's it for this video. I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.